Good morning, Facebook friends from all over the world. I'd like to just welcome you again to the beginning of another new series. This series will focus on issues surrounding Sabbath observance, but especially the observance of the Sabbath in islands of the South Pacific Division. There are some islands in the Pacific that currently worship on what the local community calls a Sunday. And that simply means that Seventh-day Adventists in those countries of the Pacific, meaning places like Kiribati, Samoa, and Tokelau, and also in the Kingdom of Tonga, locally, Seventh-day Adventists in those island fields respectively currently worship on the seventh-day Sabbath that coincides with what people on those islands call Sunday. And that in itself has raised eyebrows for many Seventh-day Adventists around the world who do not understand the complexity of the issues of the international dateline and how that has actually affected the worship or the practice of seventh-day keeping in those island fields. Now, it's important to understand that the Sabbath is a fundamental teaching of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The Adventist Church grew out of the great disappointment of 1844, and of course in 1863 the church was formalized, and it was then that the church had adopted the observance of the seventh-day Sabbath from the Seventh-day Adventist Baptists. But it was our pioneers who had searched the scriptures and studied the Bible and came to realize that the seventh-day Sabbath was clearly a teaching, a fundamental teaching, a core teaching of the scriptures, both in the Old and the New Testament. So the Sabbath doctrine is deeply rooted in the scriptures. And the Bible consistently emphasizes the importance of worship on the seventh-day Sabbath. And therefore, Seventh-day Adventists believe that the worship of God, who is the creator of the universe and who has invited people in the world to recognize him as the one who created the world, and to honor him on the day he has set apart as a day of worship since the creation of the world. And based upon that, Seventh-day Adventists recognize the significance of the Sabbath truth. In fact, the Sabbath, together with the institution of the family, both the Sabbath and the family, was instituted by God in the creation of the world. Those two great institutions, we believe, will be the major pillars to which Satan would attack in the last days. So his focus is especially on those who observe the seventh-day Sabbath, but also who embrace the values of the teachings of scriptures regarding the sanctity of marriage. And we know that there are current trends that try to introduce different views or interpretation regarding marriage and the fact that the world has tried to reinterpret what marriage actually means. Yet the Bible underscores the fact that marriage is between a man and a woman in the book of Genesis. It's one of the two institutions that God has established into creation itself as the Creator God, together with the Sabbath, which underscores that the Sabbath is of great importance. So for Seventh-day Adventists, the Sabbath is one of those pillars, so to speak, one of those major doctrines. And of course, after the establishment of the Adventist Church in 1863, we have the missionary thrust of the Adventist Church and outreach in the South Pacific region, where in the late 1800s, June 1891, with the schooner Pitcairn, Seventh-day Adventist missionaries, E.G. Gates and A.G. Reeds, had first landed on the island kingdom of Tonga and sold books as literature evangelists to European settlers, both in Vava'u and also in Nuku'alofa, Tonga Tapu. But the first resident Seventh-day Adventist missionaries that came and resided in Tonga was in May of 1895. And since then, the seventh-day Sabbath has been observed on the island kingdom of Tonga, even though in the island kingdom, the seventh day is locally called Sunday. So since 1895, the Seventh-day Adventists have worshipped on the seventh day, locally called Sunday in the Kingdom of Tonga. It has that historical roots, and where much questions have been raised over the past, specifically regarding to the day that Adventists had adopted as the day of worship in Tonga. It was not until 1995 when the government of Kiribati had moved their position to the international dateline that Seventh-day Adventists worship on Sunday, on the same day that previously was called Saturday. That is the same case with the recent incidents of December 2011, when the government of Samoa also decided to switch sides to the international dateline, that Seventh-day Adventists now in Samoa post-2011 also worship on what is locally called Sunday, but it is the same Sabbath that they have always observed since the Adventist Church had reached Samoa in the late 1800s. Previously it was called Saturday. The same day today is called Sunday. Now, many Seventh-day Adventists grapple with that. Yesterday I received a call from a friend in the North Island, Robert Vincent, who wrote this book here. He co-authored this book. The book is entitled The Great Contradiction, Confronting Seventh-day Adventist Sunday Keepers or Sunday Keeping in the South Pacific Division, especially in Kiribati, Samoa, Tokelau, and Tonga, respectively. And the author, who also co-authored with my friend John Wallace, who unfortunately passed away, was laid to rest earlier this year, but they co-authored this book. I've taken time to start reading. I picked this up yesterday, and you would notice that I've already started to read the book and also take notes on the book. The book is written in response to a book that I had published last year, and this is the book here. The book is entitled Kingdom of Sabbath Keepers, Stories about the Dawn of Christianity on the Island Kingdom of Tonga and how Seventh-day Adventist keeping came about. So I will talk a little bit more about that in the series as I continue. But this series may be of interest to Seventh-day Adventists who are struggling to understand why Seventh-day Adventists in some of these islands in the Pacific, because of the international dateline, currently worship on what is commonly known in those respective islands as Sunday, and yet it is the seventh-day Sabbath of the week. I will take time to respond to some of the issues or questions that my friend Robert Vince has raised, because they have basically written this book as a response to the book that I had written. But I will try to explain the reasons why Seventh-day Adventists in these areas of the Pacific worship on the seventh-day Sabbath, even though locally it is called the day called Sunday. So this series would specifically be of interest to Seventh-day Adventists, not only in the Pacific, but also around the world, But the principles regarding the observance of the Sabbath, which is a fundamental teaching of the Scripture, may be of interest to all Christians who have some interest in learning about the seventh-day Sabbath. So until the next recording, I wish you well. No promise as to when I would pick up with the sequel. As I find time, I will do so. But I wish you well and God's blessing until the next time. God bless.